At midnight, even in a metropolis, many blocks have already entered a quiet darkness, but it does not affect the bright lights of the most prosperous night market gathering place in Zhangzhou, and dozens of various entertainment venues are feasting and lively. And even if there is a little bit of rain, this night is still together with the moonless world to set off a glass building like Fifei Bar, which only shows bright light on the ground. On the luxurious escalator surrounded by light stone slabs and hot-dressed female welcome guests, Baihunen's appearance was quite eye-catching. In addition to this tall young man carrying a drunk girl who was almost unconscious in his arms as a matter of course, he was wearing sunglasses at this point. So much so that when the female welcome guests at the entrance of the bar bowed to see off, a group of drunk drivers came up and were a little afraid to approach casually. "Boss, do you want to?" Baihunan, who was full of alcohol, turned a deaf ear. With the diligent assistance of the lobby manager, he shoved his female companion with a hippick and a short skirt into the co-pilot of a blue Porsche sports car outside the gate, and patted the lobby manager on the shoulder handsomely. Nodding and bowing, he pushed the sports car on the road with a huge roar and rock music rhythm, leaving behind a drool. Although she couldn't see her face clearly, the woman lying in the car was still impressive with her curly black hair, fair long legs, a bumpy figure in a sports car. Fragrant cars, beautiful women, this is the dream of many men. Leaving the brightly lit entertainment center, Baihunan turned off the music, took off his sunglasses, and threw them on the fur-furnished center console. After being baptized with alcohol a few hours ago, his eyes became dull. He didn't even glance at the man next to him. How does the already drunk female companion look like? And she leads the subconscious driving with a slack eye. Let's go back to the hotel. At this time, the brain almost has no power to operate, and maybe all the traffic has been exhausted in these few hours. How many hours ago? Baihunan's face just hung up with an unconscious smirk, when he heard the ringing of the brand new mobile phone that he threw on the dashboard when he got into the car. He picked up his left hand as if he was awakened, and just picked it up, and immediately heard an angry scolding from there. "Damn it! It finally came out, you made me lose 7 million. Wait for the corpse to be collected, bastard." Familiar and unfamiliar voices erupted in my ears, a little dull thumping of the accelerator under my feet, my head was blank, but I heard the woman lying on her back on the right hand rolling in her throat and her whole body tensed up, a typical precursor to vomiting. At this moment when the memory was not enough and the phone would crash, Baihunan subconsciously braked while listening to the continuous venting rants on the phone, ready to push the woman down and vomit. At the same time, he seemed to hear a roar from far close. Anyway, in an instant, Baihunan, who turned his head to face the co-pilot, just felt as if the entire front of the windshield suddenly darkened, and then there was a loud bang, and there was a huge object in front of the low sports car, and then a light the car body has been violently tossing up. The phone leaves the hand instantly, and there is only a blur in front of you. Roll. With uncontrollable screams. According to the rebirth routine of the overwhelming online novels, when you open your eyes, you should be in another world, either a prince or a useless magician. Fuck your horse's eggs. How can there be so many rebirths for nothing? Exactly 10 hours ago. 13:47 noon. Baihunan opened his eyes half dream and half awake, and after his eyes were turned upside down and focused on the hard and fine-lined ceiling line, it took at least 2 or 3 seconds for him to react without any surprises based on the familiar feeling of the hotel starch-washed sheets on his body. What a night in a hotel! The smell of fat powder in the air and the unique smell after the passion of men and women, even the ventilation system of the boutique hotel can't dispel it. So I patted my arm lazily into the sheet next to it. It was empty, but it seemed to be a little warm. Maybe it was the movement of the girls when they closed the door that woke me up. Baihunan, who had a splitting headache, couldn't even recall that woman. He doesn't care what he looks like. The women who can be hooked up in nightclubs and bars all look the same, but is the foreign wine that he drank last night fake? Why is it a bit broken? With a blank mind, Baihunan rested his elbows on the soft mattress, and lazily reached out to the bedside table to grab his mobile phone to check the time. For him who never loved watches, this was already a subconscious action to open his eyes. I clicked several times on the wooden bedside table, but it didn't feel as expected. Baihunan finally woke up and propped up his upper body. His sturdy body was exposed to the outside of the sheets, but he still didn't see his mobile phone when he looked around. Only there was a hotel note on the bedside table, scribbled casually, "Handsome guy. Good job, thank you for giving me my cell phone." At the end, a lip print was pressed with a cell phone card from the cell phone. Baihunan couldn't help but yelled, "ICNMLGB." In a trance, it seemed as if the phone beeped when he was there last night, and he was fascinated and agreed to give the new phone he just bought to the panting woman. But it's not just a phone thing. A man could even say that the moon in the sky was taken off. CNMLGB. Didn't Saner say that he made an appointment with a rich woman, and he paid the money for a good job? Why did he meet all these poor people? What kind of online novel says that you can go from a nightclub to a female president casually? Baihunan, who was completely sober, jumped up and grabbed the sweater and sweatpants scattered on the ground and covered him. As expected, he found the car keys in his trouser pocket. But at this time, Baihunan would rather that stinky takeaway car. The time on the hotel alarm clock that I glanced at is almost 2 noon. Baihunan just wanted to slap his face hard. Last night, he really drank some kind of alcohol by accident, and he actually slept until this time. Hurried out of the room, waiting for the elevator for more than 10 seconds, he couldn't help but stabbed the button hard, and his right foot was shaking with anxiety. When passing the lobby, the familiar lobby manager came up with a smile on his face, "Brother Nan." Baihunan was annoyed, "South Hammer. Why don't you do cleaning? Why didn't anyone call me? Did you forget what day it is today?" The lobby manager hasn't had time to respond with grievances. "Are you not a long-term private room?" An angry Baihunan has already rushed out of the door. He looked up anxiously to the left and right, and confirmed that there seems to be a mobile phone store on the street on the right. He hurriedly pressed the car key and jumped on his second-hand car. The blue Common started, and when I left the parking lot, I obviously felt that the light body of the rear-wheel drive was hanging on the curb because of the anxiety. In the eyes of passers-by, they put on sunglasses and jumped out of the car to buy a mobile phone in the commercial area across the street. I really didn't drive this sports car to cross the road just to pretend to be coercive. It's really a long walk at night. After a long night's walk, I'll be a ghost. After the nightclub's appointment gun was passed through the wallet and banknotes twice, Baihunan drove this coercion weapon out to pick up girls. I left my wallet under the driver's seat and only brought some change and a mobile phone. Who would have thought that even the mobile phone would be taken away now? After a few minutes, Baihunan, who couldn't wait to turn on the phone with trembling hands, clicked on the text message, who had stopped cursing, and of course all he saw was blank. Where will the brand new mobile phone have any past records? Immediately call the phone number that should not be called, the line is busy. When Baihunan walked out of the mobile phone store and continued to dial the phone number repeatedly, another phone number called. Even if he couldn't see the address book on the new phone and couldn't display the other person's name, Baihunan quickly connected, and then he heard it as expected. A series of angry scoldings came from the microphone. "I am CNMLGB. Are you a brazier trying to make a show for Lao Tzu? Where did you go to die?" Baihunan took a deep breath before he could interject, "Boss. The phone was stolen. It was stolen early in the morning. I just bought the phone and I'm going back. I'm in the mall next door, I'll be there soon, soon." In the envious eyes of passers-by, he opened the door of the sports car and walked away. Just hung up the phone and dialed the previous number, the line was still busy, always busy. In just a few minutes, Cao Bao's small blue sports car drove into the gate guarded by the security guard, and the uncle who opened the door also looked sympathetic. "Lao Nan. You are miserable." Baihunan responded with a middle finger. Sure enough, the surging exhaust sound was particularly harsh at this time. He just poked the car into a row of sports and off-road vehicles of various colors, turned off the flame and took off his sunglasses to open the door. A stout figure had already jumped to the door, and then grabbed his head and covered his face. Pass Baihunan and start pumping. Baihunan, who was beaten to the point of being unable to fight back, could only hide his head and dodge. As a result, the mobile phone in his hand was directly grabbed and smashed out. When he looked up and saw a new mobile phone that he had only bought for 10 minutes, he was smashed into a rough building 5 or 6 meters away. The outer wall was torn apart, and another slap slapped him in the face, heavy, and his fingertips swept his eyes by the way. It was too late to feel sorry for the phone. Baihunan could only squat down while holding his eyes and screaming. As a result, the stout middle-aged man showed no mercy and continued to kick up his feet. Baihunan quickly rolled to the ground, and finally was dragged by a hand and dragged to the ground like a dead dog and kicked. Pretend. Dress up for Lao Tzu, and you will know how to pick up girls all day long. If you buy a broken car of your ma, you will know how to cheat girls everywhere. Baihunan was full of tendons, but he didn't resist. He just rolled his head on the ground to avoid screaming, which was worse than killing a pig. He came out to pull and persuade the fight. Okay, old Chen, okay, it's almost done, this thing is a hob meat. Lao Chen, who was dragged away, still kicked his anger, even if it was just his toes. If you are so special, even if you pay more attention. Look at you like this. Baihunan really looked like a lazy person who couldn't die from boiling water. He curled up on the ground and secretly observed a few people entering the building from between his fingers covering his face, and then he smiled and sat up, nonchalantly facing the people who were probing the windows one by one. Respond with your middle finger. Then he suddenly remembered something and jumped up to look at his tragic mobile phone. The screen of the new mobile phone that he had just bought for nearly 5,000 yuan was broken. There is no way to light up the fiddling, and he is obviously not good at it. After so many minutes of delay, the faces upstairs had already come down laughing and taunted Baihunan. Brother Hunan, the protection fee for Causeway Bay has been collected. I heard that you looked for it again last night. A student girl. Baihunan was desperate. Mobile phone. Anyone who has a mobile phone can lend me one, and sell it to me. A group of people are even more hippie and smiling. Oh, Brother Hunan, is the phone number of the student girl? Are you happy? I saw a killer in the back. Baihunan was not angry. Kill your mother. I took Lao Tzu's mobile phone, and then I bought it and was bought by Lao Chen. The people around were laughing more and more. There were more than 10 or 20 young and robust guys about the same age as Baihunan. Even if Baihunan raised the volume and wanted to use the phone, no one answered him, and they all cared about him yesterday. Baihunan is naturally full of boasting about his late record. You know my rules. If it weren't for today, Jemdal. The crowd even booed, 7 seconds at a time. No 1 second. Then the few middle-aged people who had just entered came out. Still the old Chen roared like thunder, hammer. Come in quickly. Baihunan, you bastard, come over to Lao Zi. Let's see how Lao Zi will clean up you today. A group of people rushed in like the students who were yelled at by the head teacher. Baihunan looked at the large pieces in his hand, opened his eyes hard, and reluctantly admitted this reality, took out the card and threw other things into the flower stand in the corner, and then went around to avoid Old Chen and followed. Old Chen caught up with a Daipen flying kick. Baihunan flexed his body and had to stretch out his hand to support the middle-aged man so that he would not fall. As a result, Lao Chen saw him in his eyes. I'm so stupid. You are a big girl, you swell up like this after you scratch it twice. Baihunan touched it ignorantly, the eyelids that had been pumped just now were really swollen and hot. Lao Chen's concerned expression holding his head in both hands, no matter how he looked at it, it looked like he was about to kiss him. 18:35 p.m. If the noon scene is captured with the footage of the TV series, Now you can slowly pull up the camera to expand the field of view, and you will find that these 3 or 4-story buildings are just the foot of a huge building. Seeing that this is a magnificent stadium, a regular stadium with 30 to 40,000 people, it is just a corner enclosed by a wall. On the other side of the stadium, there were already gongs and drums in the square. Even though the new spray painting next to it indicated that today's home game was at 7 p.m., it was only about 3 o'clock and the crowd was surging. There was a sea of blue jerseys everywhere. Friends and friends, some with family members, without exception, all wore jerseys with Blue Wind Real Estate printed on their chests. Some young people even went to the small stalls near the square where people came and went and painted blue paint. The bar is on the face, and only 2 or 3 bars cost 5 yuan, which is really a money grab. But the business is still very good. That's right, today is the match day of the top domestic football league. As the only Chinese Super League team in the southwest of the country, Zhangzhou fans of Zhangzhou Blue Wines are always proud, even if the team is relegated every year. The biggest goal is to follow the wind and rain from upgrade to downgrade and upgrade for more than 10 years. On such a home game day, the attendance rate of 30,000 people is the envy of all teams across the country. If you look at the spray-painted images of players several stories high outside the stadium building, you will find a bust that has been washed away by the wind and rain. It is Baihunan. He is the one in the photo. At the age of 20, he still had his cockscomb yellow hair dyed in the style of Killing Matt. Now, at the age of 28, his hairstyle is still as trendy as that of a nightclub cowboy, but it is more in line with the aesthetics of the current second-rate, not so rustic. There was still more than an hour before the start of the game. Baihunan, who was still wearing grey sports trousers and a black jumper, had his right eye swollen like a pigeon's egg, leaning on the door frame of the locker room, wearing a white coat next to him. The team doctor, Lao Qin, was helping him apply the ointment, and whispered, "Are you wearing a condom? You are so handsome outside with girls all day long, don't come back with a disease of Lao Tzu." The people on the sports team speak like this, and the swear words are everywhere, as if this is in line with this hormonal environment. Baihunan didn't care, grass. I've been drifting outside for many years and still don't know this? Isn't it just about having a drink with a gun? I don't smoke, take drugs, or eat randomly, of course I will pay attention to family planning. The team doctor also has no formality, hey, Xiao Fen also plans to have children. Baihunan sneered, grass. It's none of her business. Before he finished speaking, the coach Lao Chen, who was writing and drawing on a small whiteboard in the locker room to emphasize today's tactical formation, smashed the board directly. Baihunan. Shut up, Lao Zi. Get out. As a result, the small blue brush smashed directly on the back of the team doctor's half-bald head. Lao Qin turned to look at the coach with a whimper, and the players who were sitting on the chairs by the locker room wall, changing their jerseys and shoes, laughed and laughed. Chen Gang felt that the rigorous pre-match atmosphere had been destroyed, so he jumped in anger and rushed towards the gate. Baihunan saw that the situation was not good, so he hurriedly lost the team doctor and ran away. Only heard a loud bang from behind, the locker room door was closed, and there was old Chen's frantic voice inside. The staff, assistant coaches, and echelon players outside seemed to be accustomed to Baihunan's incoherence, laughing and shouting "Nanj Nanj" everywhere. Baihunan responded triumphantly. He could also chat with the caddies of the young players and kick the ball with each other. It seems that except for the coach who hates him, almost everyone likes to be with this tall, handsome and unpretentious professional old man. Players chat. 28 years old is actually the most golden age for football players. Baihunan took the mineral water handed over by others, and habitually squeezed the bottom of the bottle to confirm that there was no air leakage, and then twisted it open to take 2 sips. From the gap, enthusiastic fans began to enter in pieces, and some drum bands began to play early to exaggerate the atmosphere, and there was a dull smile on his face. Looking at the mobile phone in the hand of the other person next to him, Just thinking about whether to borrow it to make a phone call, the players of the visiting team came out of the locker room one after another. Many visiting team players recognized him. Lao Nan. Long time no see. Did you see something dirty in your eyes? Lao Nan, isn't it because you are on the big list? Why are you so leisurely? Lao Nan, you're going to do bad things again. Although it wasn't like shaking hands and hugging, Bai Hunan also smiled and nodded one by one. Da Zhang, do you want to eat hot pot at night? I'll treat you. Grandson. You still owe me a meal. Go, when have I ever done anything bad? A pace setter of spiritual civilization every year. When have you seen me get a red card? It was just a smile. More than a dozen players from the visiting team jumped onto the field outside. The coaching staff of the visiting team who came out from behind obviously recognized Bai Hunan. Bai Hunan leaned on the exit with a smile and folded his arms and looked into the distance, watching not only the players warming up, but also the coaches. At this time, the players of the Blue Wind team also came out, and they were very enthusiastic. Brother Nan. You are a bit mad at Lao Chen. Bai Hunan innocently said, why am I mad at him? It's just that he has a fire in his heart to take out his anger at me. Go, the 13th, I'm a little excited today on the 13th, pay attention. As he said that, he patted his teammate's butt. The boys exclaimed and jumped away one by one, thinking that he didn't know where he touched yesterday, so don't get sick. So Lao Chen, who came out from behind, saw the scene of the hippie smiling face, and his face was cold again. Bai Hunan had already reacted from the teammates who ran away like mice. He turned around and bowed flatteringly to the coach to cover his mouth and said, Boss, number 13 was a little excited and in good spirits, number 4 was a little lame, and rubbed his left leg a little while walking. It is estimated that the thigh muscle strain was not very good, and number 6 was absent-minded. Old Chen listened helplessly, his eyes followed Bai Hunan's treacherous official to report the content, and swept over the opposing players on the court one by one. Where's number 7? That foreign aide was just recruited by them. Bai Hunan shook his head, I don't know, then I'll have to play and watch. Old Chen's eyes wandered around the players of the visiting team and finally fell on Bai Hunan. He was no longer so irritable. Bai Hunan, you said, if you work hard and work hard enough, with your talent, you can become a popular player. It is possible for the national team to go to the national team, but what is the result? Look at Feng Jinming, Zhang Quniang, and your group. Bai Hunan actually dared to cover his head with his hands in pain. Master, your disciple is wrong. You, don't chant the hoop spell again. Wrong. He also raised one leg to act like a monkey king with the performance. The fist stance ran away. Leaving old Chen with a long sigh, he walked to the coach's bench at the side of the field with the assistant coach who was crying and laughing next to him, and watched the players start their warm-up preparations before the game. Professional player. Dare to stay out of the house on game days and not report back to the team until a few hours before the game, which is almost impossible for many professional teams with strict management. Unless you are a redoubt wrist, you may have this privilege. Not to mention that in the face of the head coach who has all the power of life and death in the team, how dare you hide from XC with a smiley face? In the end, it must be added that the substitutes who have been announced on the roster 2 days before the game, but dare not participate in the warm-up training before the game, any other team, at this time, the substitutes must at least be sparring or assistants for the main players. The coach is an assistant. He secretly went to someone to borrow a mobile phone to play. The security guard who lent him his mobile phone was amazed. Brother Nan, you're really good. The smiling Bai Hunan lowered his head into a silent sneer of contempt. UHMP know a hammer. I didn't want to explain, but I still want to say a few words. Yes, the main theme of this book is football. Maybe some readers will abandon the book. I don't watch football. I don't watch sports. I have to say, nothing at all. It's not a good habit to put a simple label. Is the helm about baseball, trader about military affairs, grassroots stone commoner about harem? A story must have a main line, old Na is still young, there is no main line. Well, in short, it is suggested that this is a novel based on football as a platform, but not football, thank you. 1915. In the evening. In all fairness, Zhangzhou is said to be a municipality directly under the central government, but it is actually a second and third tier city in the domestic provincial capital city. Blue Wind Real Estate is not the largest local real estate company in Zhangzhou. The investment in sponsoring the title team cannot be compared with Beijing, Shanghai, Zhejiang, and other places. It is even more impossible to compare with those big-name teams with state-owned assets, so every year, the local head coach and the general manager of the club rely on Lao Chen, the local head coach and the general manager of the club, to survive in the stormy seas every year. It was relegated once, but it came back after 2 years of falling, which is very different from other relegated teams that are likely to disperse. Therefore, this kind of grassroots team is very popular among local fans. Even in the 2 years of relegation, there are still tens of thousands of attendants. Now that I have returned to the top domestic leagues for 2 consecutive years, the relegation has been hovering in the middle and lower reaches. In fact, the local fans are already very happy. Sometimes it is easy to be satisfied without much pursuit. If you can avoid relegation every year, and occasionally win games, everyone will be happy, then great. I never expected a championship or anything. This is the temperament positioning of Zhangzhou Blue Wind team, which is actually somewhat similar to the positioning Baihunan gave himself. How can there be so many winners in life? He is very satisfied with everything he has now. Today's game is still the same as before. In the field of the 3 foreign aid policy, each team will try to use the foreign aid quota to the most effective midfield and front court. Scoring goals is the last word, and the Blue Wines can't afford any famous foreign aid, always from Eastern Europe or by some cheap midfield and backcourts that have never been heard of in South America. Try to tie up the fence as much as possible, and one can count as one in front, at least to ensure that the defense is relatively stable. So watching the Blue Wines game, the fans are indeed very exciting, like riding a roller coaster, because most league teams meet the Blue Wines, and they will attack waves one after another, and the teams in the top half of the league are often in the half-time offense and defense. The Blue Wind team was attacking around the penalty area of the Blue Wind team. The Blue Wind team was like a fat man with thick skin and rough flesh. If you stand outside the stadium and listen to the sound, you can hear the ups and downs of the fans' heart-pounding rhythm, suddenly quiet, then exclaimed, and then tens of thousands of people side and side together, and then applauded and praised in surprise, but after a while, they became nervous again. Tens of thousands of people watched the opponent shoot in silence, then exclaimed, and then applauded. Today is a team that consistently ranks in the top 5. The offensive and defensive drills are even more vigorous, so the frequency of quiet, exclamation and applause is very high. Baihunan, who was on the roster, was still wearing sweatpants and a sweater, but he didn't sit on the bench. Instead, he stood at an exit of the rostrum on the second floor, leaning against the door frame with his arms in his arms, watching the staff next to him. They must all be familiar with him often here, and asked him if he would like some fruit like watermelon. He entertained the leaders of the podium. There was a lot left over today. In the end, Baihunan asked for a banana, but he didn't eat it, just put it under his nose and smelled it. But if someone stood in front of him and looked at his eyes, he would find that he was a little absent-minded today, just like the kind of sloppy he always showed. Originally this was the only time he might be more focused. Because the call still didn't get through, and calling from someone else's mobile phone would leave traces, he carefully tried twice before giving up, and then quietly deleted the record, but it is said that there will still be a record at the Telecommunications Bureau. Baihunan, who was sent by ghosts, missed the message that he could only receive one way because of a stinky bitch. He was really helpless. What should I do? This was a question mark that had been haunting Baihunan's mind in the first half. He didn't let himself focus on the situation until he caught sight of Lao Chen, who was turning back frequently from the coaching seat below. Because in 32 minutes, under the furious attack of the visiting team, the new foreign player finally scored a goal. The audience was frustrated, but then there was a stronger cheer. Zhangzhou Blue Wind team is already a commonplace, we must encourage it. 3 or 5 minutes before the referee blew the halftime whistle, Lao Chen got up and walked towards the locker room. Maybe only those who knew him would notice that he looked at the podium again, thinking he was looking at the leader or sponsor. Business. Baihunan has quietly disappeared from the exit. When all the players returned to the locker room, as always, they saw the old monk Chen leaning on the only executive chair in the locker room and closed his eyes in deep thought. Baihunan sat far away in the corner of the locker room. Changed into the jersey in an unnoticed corner. The temperature was not very cold today, but it was a bit windy, so he put a training shirt over the short-sleeved jersey, and then tidy up the sneakers, standard SG steel nails. Unlike fashionable hairstyles, the sneakers Baihunan chooses are always the most common styles. They are not cheap, but they are definitely not those trendy new styles, the standard Adidas Black World Cup style, and the old-fashioned style of the 1980s. Looks more like the sneakers worn by referees now, and the frequency of other people changing a pair of shoes for a few games plus training. It will take Baihunan here for a few months, anyway, including training. He will only consume 3 or 4 pairs of identical shoes slowly. The cost of work is quite low. The sweaty main players are very used to this kind of situation, shouting and discussing complaints or scolding the referee and opponents, and 2 or 3 other substitute players except the substitute goalkeeper came over and quietly approached Baihunan. "Brother Nan is going." Baihunan looked blank. "Ah? We're not waiting for old Chen's orders." If anyone goes over the appearance list of the domestic leagues in recent years, they will find that even if they are relegated to the next level league, Baihunan, a professional player who has been in the sports school for more than 20 years, has since entered the profession under Lao Chen. Since the league team, they have never played the main starter, and even if it is a substitution, it will always be in the second half, so in the impression of most professional players or coaches, he is a marginal player, and his physical strength is not enough to support the whole team. The kind of substitute on the field. And after coming off the bench, few people can think of a few amazing games related to him. He has hardly scored a goal, and has not made many impressive mistakes. It feels mediocre to ordinary, but it is better than the losing professional team. Those players are so dreary. Maybe other professional teams with slightly better grades are unlikely to stay in the team to get the contract, but I heard that Lao Chen was the coach who brought him out since he was a child, so as Lao Chen's direct descendant, he has always stayed in the team for a while. Playing time off the bench, so many Blue Wind team members may not have a special impression of Baihunan, except that he likes to go out and spend time with girls, and his popularity is very good. Other people are rarely known about it. Lao Chen's meditation ended a few minutes after the players were sweating. As usual, Lao Chen began to assign tasks very targeted, usually the number to the number. What are the characteristics of the opponent today, whether he is excited or not? The most important, the good thing is how to deal with it. It's very detailed. When it's detailed to break through or defend, it's more likely to choose left or right. Because it is basically aimed at the players who want to match the position, everyone needs to memorize very few things and is very accurate, so the listeners can concentrate on remembering the knot for a few seconds, and there is about 10 minutes of rest time left. Lao Chen basically, I won't say how the whole thing is going to be. It's all such a detailed thing, and it's almost time to go on stage after clapping my hands. Baihunan was still wrapped in his training suit, and only after he came out did he start to warm up with other substitutes on the track beside the court. The local fans in Zhangzhou are very familiar with him. The nearby stands called Lao Nan and Brother Hao Nan one after another. Because he is tall and handsome, from time to time, female fans suddenly shout out Lao Nan, I love you, causing a roar of laughter. Baihunan is very cool at this time. He never looks up in the stands. While stretching his back thigh muscles, he squinted and watched the field intently, which proves whether the opposing players feel that after making corresponding adjustments. Not used to it. That's right, all the words that Lao Chen could say were all reported by him back to the locker room in advance to report to the coach. Without 2 brushes, can you earn hundreds of thousands of salary and competition bonuses every year? Of course, Bai Hunan never thought that compared with those big names with millions of annual salary, some things are life. He felt that his life was good enough. 20:30 p.m. Before the age of 8, Bai Hunan practiced table tennis with his father, China's national ball. His father Bai Lianjun was the table tennis coach of a youth sports school in downtown Zhangzhou. It was a matter of course for him to take his son on the road, especially when he was a father by himself. Being a mother again, Bai Hunan has been picking up table tennis in the table tennis training room of the sports school for as long as he can remember when he was 2 or 3 years old. But the rules of professionalism are very simple. Talent is an absolute prerequisite, without talent is nothing. Even if Bai Lianjun won the first place in the country when he was young, Bai Hunan was in the 3rd grade of elementary school. The child can't find the north, and people have already started to play Zhangzhou city-level competitions. Bai Hunan still doesn't see much hope. His lack of control over wrist shaking and rotation has made Bai Lianjun die. Many relationships could not be faked, so he quickly transferred his son to the football team led by a friend. Bai Hunan has been with Lao Chen from the district sports school since then. So only old Chen knows where Bai Hunan's talent is. It can't even be called football. Bai Hunan's motor skills are inherited from his parents, who are athletes. He is really better than most of his peers. He has been growing up in the sports school system, and all aspects of nutrition and training are professional growth. Detours. But when he started participating in various provincial-level national youth football competitions at the age of 12 or 13, and gathering with hundreds of top youth sports schools from all over the country, Bai Hunan once again saw what it means to be talented in football. He almost. But by then he already knew what made him special. Bai Lianjun even wanted to send his son to the sports school Go or chess sports team. Because when Bai Hunan was still playing table tennis, he found that he could replay. Replay is a Go term. When professional Go players train, they do not play chess with others most of the time, but replay alone. Some replay according to famous chess replays, and some replay according to their own chess. It is in the order recorded by the reliable players, but some masters can replay the game out of thin air. Of course, it mainly refers to the chess that has just been played. In this process, we discuss the gains and losses and seek lessons. This is a very good way to improve. Bai Hunan is when he has no results in table tennis, his angry father will scold him for what is going on, how can the opponent beat you like this, and when he has no brains, he can start from the first ball and resume the game with grievances, well, he is like this, I am like this, I think so, but he played like that, I can't reach it. The second point is, Ramble can talk about the whole game one by one. Maybe Bai Lianjun, who was a table tennis coach, really didn't notice this characteristic of his son at first, but when he realized it later, Bai Hunan was already obsessed with football, and he has followed Lao Chen since then. And since he was a child, he has been replaying for Lao Chen. When the camera was still an expensive thing, his ability to replay can be said to have helped Lao Chen miraculously, allowing a little-known district-level youth sports school coach to lead him. The team has won 2 national championships in the teenage age group. As a little-known Zhangzhou youth football training, it has always been far inferior to the Northeast and South Guangdong regions. The result was a series of upsets, and the professional league just started to run, so that Lao Chen officially embarked on the prosperous road of professional coaching. Even if modern coaches have introduced a large number of video recorder technology, coaches who attach importance to business will basically use watching game videotapes as an important way to collect information. Bai Hunan's ability to review the game still has an incomparable advantage. Because he is live and instant. Bai Hunan, who has not read many books, has basically been immersed in the football world for the past 20 years. He has become accustomed to watching the actions of 11 opponents. Then quietly report to Lao Chen, and then make corresponding adjustments. There is no camera to watch it repeatedly. How many people can tell how many times a certain forward of the opponent has made breakthroughs in the half? Among them, how many times are the left and right breakthrough options? Whoever has the most touches in the entire opposing team, who has the highest number of effective passes among the seemingly similar number of touches, who seems to be a midfielder with 3 or 4 players. It is the core, and what is the habitual movement of this person after taking the ball? Look up to the left or the right first, who is the corresponding person? Baihunen's mind is able to express it in an orderly manner. One of them is super memory, and the other is probably some kind of unique logical thinking ability. Baihunen has been trained for 20 years on the talent of simple review and narrative, which is to quickly sort out the content that he can review and draw conclusions and report it to Lao Chen. That's why he always watches off the court in the first half. This is why he never worries about not being able to play and not getting paid. Without him there would be no Lao Chen. For him, life is so easy. Use a seemingly tasteless talent to the ultimate freedom. But Lao Chen really hates him like a son. Baihunen like this can go even higher. 15 minutes after the start of the second half, Lao Chen stood up from the coaching bench and made a clenched fist to the warm-up substitutes. The other 2 or 3 warm-up substitutes were already familiar with them. Brother Nan. Lao Chen asked you to come on. It's gone. Because Baihunen is number 16, he has been wearing this number since he was 8 years old. He and other children liked to choose number 10. Later, they competed for number 9, number 11, and even number 7. Baihunen wore it from the very beginning. Substitute number. Baihunen sighed. He had to come off the bench at least 15 times a year to get the full salary, plus share the bonus with the main players, otherwise he would be deducted a lot, so when he played, it was not a waste time to join the game. Numbers are like this today, and Lao Chen hopes to change something by himself. But today he really doesn't want to go. Although there has never been such a thing like this, Baihunen used to take off his training shirt and said in a low voice, "I don't feel comfortable, can I not go on?" Old Chen really didn't expect him to dare to say such a thing. He raised his anger, and saw that face on the coach's bench. He was about to get angry in front of tens of thousands of people. "I'm scolding you." Baihunen hurriedly threw his training shirt and ran. "Okay. I know you and Bai Lianjun are brother-in-law, maybe I'm still your son." The assistant coach has already rushed over and hugged the furious coach who was going to kick Baihunen. It happened that another coach had given the bench to the 4th official, and there was a dead ball on the field. Baihunen hurried on the court to avoid Lao Chen's pursuit. And just like the previous games, Baihunen whispered to every teammate who passed by from the beginning of the game, "Old Chen said you want to. You may not be able to tell everyone. Anyway, you will tell everyone who you meet, and finally stand in the position where you have been playing for 20 years. If Baihunen's talent can be combined with the player himself." Lao Chen thought hard for a long time before leaving an interception midfielder for Baihunen in his team. No matter what kind of formation, as long as Baihunen is on the court, he must be an interceptor-type midfielder, and the other midfielders will follow him to make corresponding adjustments. How to adjust it? At first, Lao Chen explained to the young Baihunen, who was not a little bit, and asked him to go up. Speaking of which, after the age of 14 or 15, Baihunen basically went up and played by himself. Anyway, before going on the court, he pretended to gather with Lao Chen and exhort him for a few words. The referee blew his whistle. Wanyan's substitute Baihunen stood in a position where he couldn't be beaten, but today he really didn't know how to play. "I was just circling in my mind, where is the handicap level of this game?" 20:45 p.m. Baihunen didn't like the feeling of standing on the court. Even if he first saw this black and white thing, he fell in love with it. This kind of feeling is like madly in love with the pure girl at the same table. Even if she doesn't touch her hands, she is still fascinated. but when she looks back, she finds that she is in a hair salon in a small alley. So disgusting to vomit. Now one person knows how bad Chinese football is, and Baihunan, who entered the industry at the age of 9, is even more aware of the filth inside. Looking at the passionate spectators in the stands, looking at the greedy faces of the referees, and the phone calls of those mysterious bookmakers, Baihunan felt that he had made an appointment with a fat woman, and he had to finish the game with tears in his eyes. The work ethic of professional players. It's not that you just want to play a good game. Anyway, at this time, he saw that any small action of the referee was meaningful. Maid, what the is that text message for? Stepping on the cocoa-sounding SG steel nails on the concrete floor of the aisle, it is easy to gain grip when stepping on the turf field, but Baihunan rarely needs the grip of such sudden stops and turns, just wandering slowly in front of the back line. After all, I still think in my mind, should I let it go or should I block it? If someone were to analyze Baihunan's more than 10 years of professional playing career more carefully, they might discover that this inconspicuous 10,000-year-old substitute would most likely bring changes to the scene after playing, not necessarily the score, but more the sense of the scene that can't be reflected in any data. Sometimes it completely makes the opponent's most aggressive player do nothing, sometimes it suddenly liberates the vitality of the front court, and sometimes it suddenly becomes a big colander. Baihunan can't remember how many times he has brought victory to the team, but in the past 2 years, since that mysterious phone call found him, he has occasionally missed a ball, kicked an empty foot, intercepted mistakes, and gave the opponent a big gift. Some people have noticed that, rather than spending a lot of money to bribe the front court players to score goals, the bookmakers are more keen to find such inconspicuous weak teams in the middle and backcourts to play the game, especially the midfielders who are all possible. Satisfying the dealer once, he will earn 200,000 yuan. Baihunan feels that he is no different from the young ladies in the nightclub. When he was a teenager, he understood the dark reality of this society. After so many years, it's only natural that you don't hurry up and sell it at a good price. Not every game has requirements. The fixed and mysterious text messages will only give news on the eve of the game. Most of the time, it is blank, but sometimes it will ask for what kind of score by name. Losing is normal, winning is upset, so except in special circumstances, we will strive to win the upset and kill the whole game. Most of the time, we designate a few to lose, and the losses are unexpected, so that the retail investors who participated in the betting lost all their money. So this doesn't make Baihunan embarrassed. If you can win, try to fight as much as possible. The point is whether the dealer has bought the opponent's water. If he loses, there is no difference between losing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. This kind of weak team in the middle and backcourt is also the most favorite man for gambling dealers. Of course, the more secretive the better. The dealer does not want the game to be faked so that everyone can see the traces of manipulation behind it, so that those stupid fans still think the stadium everything on it is a real fight. The new black foreign aid with real knives and real guns has already rushed over with the ball. Baihunan took a deep breath, since he had no way of knowing the content of the text message, and he didn't have time to check the odds level on the gambling website. Now he can only think of winning as much as possible. The decision, Baihunan raised his right foot to make a big stride lateral movement to intercept. It's just a matter of blinking. The Brazilian foreign aide, who has never put this domestic substitute in his eyes, didn't even think about it at all. He directly followed his most familiar body reaction and mocked at this rash interception. With one wave, he can dexterously cross this stupid midfielder to intercept and break into the back line. With a bang, it seemed like a logical move, but the foreign aide slammed into Baihunan's shoulder. The 28-year-old user gently raised his elbow, a very subtle little movement that can be described as the hardest body. The tip of the elbow is steady as if waiting there, waiting for the black foreign aide's soft underbelly under the chest and above the lower abdomen to take the initiative to usher in an intimate contact. The whole body function in the high-speed aerobic exercise seems to be acupuncture, and the foreign aide takes a breath. did not come up, staggered and bounced off. He knew in his heart that this right-footed foreign aide was best at swiping at people with the outside of his instep. He had succeeded 5 or 6 times in the first half, so Baihunan deliberately sold an empty seat. In fact, he feinted a shot and swayed his whole body like a kid. Returning to the route, the ball was intercepted without any accident, and the referee, who was picky about the money, could not pick the stab at it, causing the tens of thousands of spectators in the audience to reverberate in unison. In a close match, it would be good for all the players to have such a clean frontal interception 3 or 5 times. The substitute who just came on the court had such a performance, and all the spectators were excited as if they had played chicken blood. Baihunan felt the pressure and rubbing of the foot nails on the sphere. This is the so-called foot feeling. He looked up on the field and looked at all the players on the field. The leg came a long pass from 30 meters away. Almost 20 years ago, Baihunan fell in love with football. He heard from a promotional poster introducing the captain of the Brazilian national team. One of the magic skills of the world's top player is that he can hit a ball with one kick from a distance of 50 meters. A coin. The ignorant teenagers at that time were shocked by this. So I put a lot of effort into this. The accuracy of about 30 meters is not a coin, at least a watermelon is no problem. In fact, the whole scene was rushed from the new foreign aid to Baihunan's long pass. In the blink of an eye, the movements were stretched and coherent, and the game ball landed steadily in front of the line where the team's forwards were running. The audience couldn't help but stand up and hold their breath for a moment. After concentrating, they shouted in unison. At noon, the young striker who was still playing with Baihunan kicked the ground a few steps. He threw off the defender, but the angle of the shot in the end was not very good. He reluctantly came with the disappointment of tens of thousands of people in the audience. One shot. Baihunan was not disappointed. He glanced at the annoyed forward who was dozens of meters away. He didn't even look at the winger who was yelling at his partner for not being able to shoot better. He turned back and pulled up the foreign aide, who stood up in pain while clutching his chest. He smiled but spoke viciously. Opening, sheet. Fake you. Fake you. Shit. The foreigner was stunned and couldn't believe this kind of treatment. Baihunan leaned into the other person's ear even more viciously. Shit. 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 Fake you, you bastard. Whoever told him that he only knew these 2 words, he still learned it in bars and nightclubs. If the opponent is a domestic player, he can use all the dialects. But the effect was still achieved. A few minutes later, when the new black foreign player got the ball to break through again, he had a chance to pass the ball. Looking at Baihunan's 78-meter outside smile, he chose grudge. The more confident a player is in his own skills, the more he likes to choose the best way to pass the opponent, and only then can he wash away the humiliation he just received. This is a common occurrence on the football field. Totally crush you both physically and mentally. You can't be considered an excellent athlete without this kind of momentum, so as long as you don't get dizzy, the coach also encourages this kind of behavior. The new black foreign aide quickly shortened the distance between the two to within 2 meters, which is already a very delicate range for professional players. Players with outstanding explosiveness can change the relationship between the two at any time through instant explosions, while players with delicate and fancy feet can use shaking to change the opponent's center of gravity, and this black player is changing the speed through the fast and slow. The unique bounce and flexibility of African descent is stronger. Make an emergency stop and start suddenly. Many defensive players may fall to the ground accidentally, but Baihunan just took a steady step ahead to press down the opponent's right side, blocking the opponent's right side that he is used to breaking through. He knows very well that the right foot of this new black foreign player is far better than the left. 78 of the dribbling legs are the right foot, and the left foot is only used for support. Maybe the opponent's left foot is better than himself, but the right foot is too excellent. When the body made a subconscious reaction in an instant, it was the right foot that took the initiative to go, so this kind of interception by the lower back made the black player very uncomfortable, so he could only use his left foot to move down, ready to adjust to the right foot, Baihunan take another step to hold down the right side, and the right foot will only be able to go to the left. 2 or 3 consecutive hits, the two of them will move from the middle of the court to the left side. The other players keep changing positions, trying to give these two to assist, but the black player who had already made did not raise his head at all, let out a frantic cry, relied on his physical fitness like a black rubber with amazing elasticity, slammed his right foot, and rushed over leaning on Baihunan. This technique, the difference in physical fitness cannot be compensated by the brain, and the distance is opened by half a meter. Baihunan shoveled over without hesitation, cursing incessantly, "Sheet! Fake you, you!" Originally, I was overjoyed. I felt that the black player who was killed and ascended to the sky only felt a pain in his calf and stomach, and then he was hooked to the ground. He heard a series of insults that he didn't understand. He looked down in disbelief, and found the opponent's steel. The sole of the spiked shoe was actually coming towards his calf, and he poked the hole hard. In the eyes of Zhangzhou fans, Lao Nan's desperate style of saburo is so fierce. In the first half, the opponent's number 1 killer was like a duck to water. Shang has already started shouting neatly, "Come on, kill him!" The whole stadium seemed to be fueled by fire, and the heat was much higher. This kind of change in the atmosphere cannot be seen in any statistics. The corner of Lao Chen's mouth pulled a proud smile of satisfaction, and he leaned back on the back of the coach's chair. He didn't stand in the scene and shout like the first half. 21:28 p.m. The so-called Laohuza means that there may not be anything outstanding, but he eats the rules thoroughly. Baihunan's action of tackling the ball is on the side, his face is still twisted with diligence, his toes are stretched and he tries to slide over as low as possible. The referee who blew the foul whistle from more than 20 meters away did not think it was a big move at all. It was just an ordinary technical interception of the foul, and it was not in the area where cards could be given. It was an indirect gesture to raise his hand on the way to the incident. Free kick. The black player who has been constantly scolded was completely angry, jumped up and pointed to his leg and complained to the referee. Baihunan also got up, still with an innocent expression on his face, but the corners of his mouth were still fake you and shit, and he dared to stand in front of the black man and pointed to the other's wound and shook his head, saying that it had nothing to do with him. Under the sound of tens of thousands of people shouting and restless, his swearing in Zhangzhou accent could not be heard a few meters away. The referee, who was already 7 or 8 meters away, stretched his neck to notice the wound, feeling that he was blocked and complained. The black player pushes away the opponent in front of him violently. This kind of emotion is actually a combination. The surrounding noisy environment, the emotion of being provoked again and again, and the self-confidence that is good at being good but being annoyed by the plot of the cowhide candy, and finally the burning pain of the wound may be mixed together. Hot-blooded, simple-minded, and well-developed is usually the evaluation of athletes. It has nothing to do with being smart or not. Elite athletes are usually very smart, but simple-mindedness is indeed very common, and it is easy to be provoked. Then tens of thousands of people in the audience witnessed this scene. Baihunan seemed to have been slapped with a stick in the head. God knows how he bounced. He fell heavily to 2 meters away. Roll. The face is more twisted and terrifying than the woman who is giving birth. It should be said that the vast majority of the audience thought their players were injured, and the frenzied scolding quickly connected into a wave, and the fanatical fans near the fans of the away team even threw mineral water bottles at the fans of the away team and attacked. The other players on both sides immediately rushed over to fight like a group. In particular, several members of the Blue Wind team knelt down beside Baihunan and were about to cry. No matter how seasoned the referee is, in this chaotic situation, he must cut through the mess quickly so as not to affect the order of the game, look at Baihunan's acting skills, beckon the team doctor to enter the field, and then no longer need to look at the big wound on the black player's leg. Without hesitation, he showed him a red card, and he got off the court immediately. Any dispute in the game is one thing. The referee stops the game and then starts the game. That's another thing. The latter is easy to attract cards. The red card or the yellow card often depends on the acting skills of the person who fell to the ground and rolled. To attack the head is to actively apply for the death penalty. It seems that Baihunan has been beaten by Lao Chen all day long and has accumulated rich body language. The referee chose to believe that he was plotted against him. The team Dr. Lao Chen naturally gave Baihunan a thumbs up and gave a thumbs up on behalf of the coaching staff. Baihunan, who limped back into the game after tens of seconds, had already played 11 against the entire team, and then returned to normal within 5 seconds, attracting boos from the visiting team's audience. However, the ratio of tens of thousands to hundreds of fans of the home and away teams actually inspired the audience of the home team to easily shout in unison that Jamaica fell and was suppressed, and then the unstoppable shouting of the constantly changing content did not stop until the end of the game. Pass. Because of the lack of this new force of new foreign aid, the offensive momentum of the entire visiting team disappeared immediately. The drawbacks of domestic teams like to use one or two super foreign players to conquer the world are exposed. Even if the coach of the visiting team immediately adjusts the formation, the players on the court, the formation and momentum are still chaotic. What is the charm of football? Many girls are wondering why stinky men may have different hobbies, but they are easy to like football. Some people have studied it. The biggest possibility is that football is the most warlike sport in a peaceful world. It is easy to stir up the movement of the desire for war in the heart of men. Because of the large number of people, it is difficult for this sport to solve the problem by itself. This is a collective sport where morale, technique, and mentality are equally important. It uses the toes that humans are the least good at to complete complex ball control and relatively long high-energy games. Time, these are like wars, testing the player's comprehensive endurance. The coach is like a commander. Even if he changes his tactics by waving the flag, some soldiers on the battlefield feel that it is already 1-0 and that there are fewer individuals, so they simply defend to the end. They are already much stronger than the home team. How could they admit to being counseled at such a time? Naturally, they have to fight back wildly. The requirements laid out by the coach before the game were completely disrupted. No matter how hard he shouted and waved on the sidelines, it was not as good as Baihunan's repeated indoctrination on the field. Go! Go up! Go! Go for them! The Blue Wines, who had been under pressure to play half-court offense and defense, immediately reversed the trend, forcibly pressed the visiting team back with different opinions, and turned into the home team repeatedly hitting the goal. Perhaps this is why football is the most favored by gambling companies. There are so many factors outside of pure technology in this game that anything can make it impossible. Maybe I had told me to prepare for everything before the game, but I never thought that the Blue Wines would be pressed and played. The players of the visiting team were even more flustered. It feels like a drop in the bucket can't change the situation. Because the entire Blue Wind team members are madly taking turns as if they were stimulants, grabbing everything that can be grabbed or not, and shooting everything that can be shot or not. Medically speaking, it is a massive secretion of adrenaline, which is comparable to excitement. The agent, unsurprisingly, in about 80 minutes, the winger scored a goal to equalize. The gongs and drums in the arena were about to break through the sky, and the audience was already satisfied with the surprise. They just raised the octave and shouted cheers, which completely pushed the mental state of the home team players to the highest level, and the momentum completely overwhelmed the visiting team and became a tailwind. The players of the visiting team are even more chaotic. Some people have already felt that the wind is not right, and they have withdrawn from the piece. Some people naturally do not accept such an ending. The message from the coach is that they must win. Taking the ball to delay time, some people are manic and want to rush forward. In this way, there is no threat. Even Baihunan looked back and saw that there was only one central defender left behind him, and everyone else assisted in the opponent's half, so he rarely moved forward 10 meters. It should be said at this time that few people realize that this substitute has really changed the direction of the entire team, because it is not him who scored the goals, the passing data, the time with the ball, the number of shots are nothing, except for disputes with people. Let the opponent get a red card, nothing to do with him, he is still the mediocre midfielder who is a little lazy and just escorts in front of the defender. But unknowingly, as the time approached the end of the 90 minutes, the visiting team had become huddled in the penalty area and could not fight back. Baihunan didn't realize that he was walking past the midfield circle, and looked at the two teams in a trance. In and out of the opponent's penalty area, the fans were so excited that they were going to have a heart attack. The opponent's defender was a little flustered and directly hit the ball without asking the direction. The clock has stopped at 90 minutes, and there is only 1 or 2 minutes of stoppage time. Immediately, you can see that the away game, which is the second best, has won a point. Barely accomplished the goal. Then a blue-win team player rushed to intercept and rubbed against the ball. The white and red ball changed its trajectory, flew high into the sky, and fell to the ground. Baihunan saw that 5 or 6 players from both sides rushed up. He just subconsciously took a few steps forward, and then instinctively mocked himself for what he was doing. Outside the corner of the opponent's penalty area, with a puff, the two players jumped up and fought for the top. Baihunan heard the head of the two hit each other with a toothache. The moment they fell to the ground in pain, the ball fell to him. Is completely a subconscious action, the thigh stops the ball, let the momentum of the ball be completely controlled and flick, and then fall. A panicked pounce from a nearby defender. Baihunan later remembered that his mind was actually blank at that moment, maybe he meant that he had no distractions, his eyes were fixed on the ball, his whole body and mind seemed to be connected to the ball, he knew what the ball was thinking, when it falls at what height. A professional player of the past 20 years gently stretches out his foot and tiptoes on his instep, and the ball that has not yet touched the ground slides past the defender in slow motion. There was no chance to live in Baihunan, and he slipped past. After all the spectators were attentively watching the second ball hit by the substitute number 16, the ball landed perfectly on the right side of Baihunan, the height and distance were just right, and the footsteps when the ball was bumped just changed, without the slightest slack. Full of powerful rhythm, use the outer side of the instep to pump directly on the sphere, with high-definition slow motion, you should be able to see the sphere morphing violently in an instant, proving that the power of the leg is all transmitted to the sphere. Then the football was like a cannonball unloaded, with a straight line, as if the ball didn't even turn, so fast that everyone pressed the pause button and could only look back at the result. With a swipe, there was friction on the inner corner of the lower edge of the goal frame, and the entire white net was violently pulled. No matter how high the opponent's goalkeeper jumped, he never expected to fire suddenly 30 meters away from the gate, and it was still even. It is too sudden to stop the ball with the ball and stop the ball in one go without landing. Baihunan feels like his whole body is flying. The flying that he yearned for most when he was a kid. How many years has he not scored a goal? The stadium with tens of thousands of people seemed to be quiet for a moment, and then screamed in ecstasy. It seems that the lore-like joy of this buzzer-beater can't be described by the mountain and the tsunami, and it is still with such a world wave. Baihunan didn't do any celebratory gestures, he landed dumbly, and then was immediately hugged by the teammates who rushed up and slammed to the ground, pressing down tightly. Only the roars of the distant audience and the wild shouts of teammates could be heard. No matter how many years later, Baihunan has no regrets about this goal, and even if it is exchanged with his life, he is willing to give it. Even if only for a moment. Any sport has professional and amateur distinctions. Without height, bounce and skills, it is impossible to play the most wonderful dunk in basketball. As for table tennis, everyone can play, but the professional threshold of lifting arc spin draw it is very clearly placed there. It is difficult for ordinary people to cross. The watershed of running a 100 meter run in 12 seconds is placed there. If you can't do it, you can't do it. You can't run within 12 seconds even if you change your life to the top running shoes and brand name sportswear. Most people have a lifetime. Not possible. There is only football. It can be said that anyone who likes to play football may have made a world wave. As long as the timing is right, it is possible to take a long shot or an exquisite upside-down golden hook. This is a standard project that is easy to learn but difficult to master. A group of stinky-footed players, as long as they have the same level, can still play very happily, unlike tennis, where they can only keep picking up the ball if they are not at a certain level, which is annoying. Professional players have a higher chance of hitting the world wave in training. For example, when they practice set pieces, if they kick 10 or 20 more than half, the world wave will appear. The proportion of high-level players will be higher, but they play well off the field and are present on the field. There are many players who have no spiritual performance on the internet. Football is too much about state and luck. Is as mysterious as life is unpredictable. Otherwise, why are basketball and volleyball rarely selected as materials by gambling companies? Football is the #1 item favored by major bookmakers all over the world. This line of business has long since become a river and lake. If you come out and mix, you will have to pay it back sooner or later. So at this moment Baihunan was sure that he was really dead. His right hand was originally on the side of the woman's face, and instinctively grabbed the bucket seat back of the sports car. His left hand was thrown onto the steering wheel after he dropped the phone completely, and then his whole body was so tight and fixed. Roll with the body. This is really just an instinctive reaction, he can't do anything at all. The two bodies, which were not wearing seat belts, collided, and the strong centrifugal force even pressed the woman tightly against Baihunan, and then squeezed together in a corner of the carriage. Baihunan had no way of comprehending the elastic softness that the tip of his nose felt. He only had one thought, I'm dead. Then the whole sports car smashed to the ground, its bottom upside down. The metal scratched the ground with a harsh rubbing sound, and finally returned to silence. Baihunan is unbelievable. Thanks to the sports car's anti-rolling seat back skeleton design, thanks to the two people tightly squeezed together, and thanks to Baihunan's strong physical fitness and instinctive body protection actions that are different from ordinary people, except for the huge impact and vibration, he didn't even feel it. Syncope. Violent tumbling and collision to a sudden standstill, it may be a matter of a second or two, earth-shaking. If the unknown lady started to vomit, Baihunan felt that he was unscathed, so even if his head and feet were upside down, Baihunan still pushed the woman away, kicked the lightweight car door with a kick, and took himself out of the car with difficulty. Crawling out, it seems that there is still pain and wet feeling somewhere on the head, but the alcohol seems to stop the nerve feeling, and more importantly, Baihunan has an indescribable desire to survive at this time. Intense desire, like a rebirth to escape from the dead, he wants to live. I never wanted to live like this before. This inner impulse prompted him to squeeze out desperately, even though his legs were still shaking involuntarily, he still managed to climb out of the car on his back, but he just lay on the ground and saw the blue light at a glance by the not too bright street lights. The engine compartment of the delicate little sports car head has been completely gone. The entire front of the car is like a broken corn cobs, which are detached from the body in a row. If you look a little further, a huge four-wheeled construction vehicle, with a cold and reflective bucket head in front, seems to be hanging with blood. The wreckage of some front engine. The feeling is of course the gasoline and oil that overflowed everywhere. The strong and pungent smell made Baihunan's dull body start to tremble. This heavy-duty construction vehicle weighing more than 10 tons clearly came directly from the viciousness that killed all the lives in the small sports car. If it wasn't for the co-pilot's woman vomiting and Baihunan's sudden braking, then the row of steel teeth on the metal bucket at the front of the construction car would have torn apart the side of the car body, passed directly through Baihunan's body, and sent him to the west. If you really come out, you have to be trustworthy, and if you want to die, you will use the most tragic way to put people to death. There is no buffer left to survive. I didn't have time to take a closer look inside. The two shadows had already jumped from the cab of the 1 or 2 meters high construction vehicle. Maybe I didn't expect this sports car to escape the murder of a certainty, waving something cursing. Baihunan didn't even have a chance to get up, he could only roll on the ground, and then a sturdy steel rod rubbed his shoulders and neck and hit the ground like a torn wind. The cement on the ground is still hurt by sparks splashing on the face. This is clearly still going straight to kill people. Seeing the living person, Baihunan seemed to have returned to the world from hell. He could only use his back to kick the door and window of the car body with one foot, bounce himself up a little to the nearest shadow, and use all his strength to slam into the other side. The tall and sturdy Baihunan threw the man holding the steel drill to the ground almost instantly. The unprepared attacker held a steel drill more than 1 meter long in his hand. Instead, he had no lethal power to the closeto body fighting Baihunan. He turned the steel drill head around and smashed it. Baihunan had desperately smashed his forehead into the opponent's face. The swinging force under the huge survival instinct was extremely professional. How many years had he been training his forehead to hit the header, and he immediately made people dizzy. However, Baihunan jumped to his feet, then threw off his thigh and kicked the opponent on the head. The contact surface of the instep can make the head fly like a football. Multi-professional action. The murderer who was wielding a steel rod just now fell unconscious like a heavy sack without a word. Baihunan completely gritted his teeth and picked up the steel drill on the ground. Although he has never killed anyone, professional athletes have always been good at fighting. Now looking at the stunned shadow behind him, he can feel his heart beating completely. During acceleration, strenuous exercise without preparatory activities and even a little dizzy. He knew that it was adrenaline that was violently impacting the brain nerves, and he had to control it, otherwise it would lead to a decrease in stamina. The team Dr. Lao Qin talked a lot about these things. The shadow in the back may feel that his accomplice is in a position to face a wounded who crawled out of a crashed and overturned vehicle, so he has no intention of helping a few meters away with a cigarette in his mouth. Gun. Even if he had heard of these ruthless people, it was the first time that Baihunan had really faced a gun, at least from the outline of the shadow, it was a pistol or something. On the ground, there was a crisp sound. This is no fight at all. Dead. The other party immediately felt that he was in a position to win, and slapped the cigarette out of his mouth. Damn it! What are you? The words just started, the cigarette fell to the ground, igniting a large area of oil on the ground, and the mixed oil suddenly burst into a flame of 1 or 2 meters high, which directly devoured the guy who stepped on the oil. The guy who was still holding the gun screamed constantly. He jumped around and then fell to the ground. Maybe he wanted to put out the flames on his body, but he once again forgot that the ground was full of oil, and now he was completely tumbling in the sea of fire. As soon as the raging fire started, Baihunan, who had escaped from death, immediately turned around and ran. Even though his feet were weak, the familiar feeling came back after he kicked the ground, and he strode even more, but he suddenly lost some sense of balance, and stumbled under his feet. He fell to the ground with a scream behind him, but at a glance, he caught a glimpse of the woman in the upside-down carriage. The huge firelight had illuminated the entire front of the car, and it could ignite the entire car at any time. Bai Huahua's body was particularly dazzling in the tattered blue machinery and firelight. Even though the mentality of surviving and wanting to live has filled his entire brain, Baihunan immediately rushed to the door of the car subconsciously, pulling the woman desperately, even tearing off the clothes on the other party's body, which was enough to set the fire on the front and back. The spicy figure was brought out from the deformed door and window, and the biggest contributor seems to be still not wearing a seat belt. You can hug the opponent and just drag it out, and a loud bang explodes behind you again. Is like setting off a fireworks. Baihunan knew that his career as a professional player was also a fart with this firework, and there was nothing left. It was different from the imagined car explosion. There were no metal parts flying around. It seemed that the fuel tank was expanding by itself. Anyway, it was only super bright for a moment. He stumbled to the ground and rolled with the woman for weeks. When you press down on a woman, you can finally feel the softness and elasticity of a living person, really. At this moment, Baihunan just wanted to live, desperate to live. What a precious opportunity to be able to breathe this kind of air and stand on the ground, but what the is going on? The sweaty Baihunan was screaming in his heart. How did it become like this? So now Baihunan, who is lying beside the raging fire but dripping with cold sweat, knows that he is done. Mostly someone beat the blue wines to win. The odds of such a big upset must be frighteningly high, and if they hit such a score, it would even make the opening dealer lose money. The dealers who dare to open the market, in the eyes of their players, are big guys with deep backgrounds and unusual backgrounds. There are seniors in the circle, and there are gang members in the outside society and even Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Although I don't know which eldest brother this mysterious phone call is, most of the characters who can afford to lose 7 million are based on mobile phone signals. Isn't that how they are played in movies? No longer just guarding your car, you will be able to wait for yourself, and then you must kill yourself. I have witnessed it. Now people are dead. That is the ending that never ends. There was another explosion of something. Although the battle was not as big as before, it still woke up the lost Baihunan. The screams could no longer be heard, and it seemed that he could smell the burnt flesh. Baihunan wanted to cry without tears. What can I say to the police? Thinking of this, Baihunan saw that the guy who was knocked unconscious by him seemed to be moving in pain, and got up quickly. Even if the other party wanted to put him to death, Baihunan never thought of killing someone or doing anything, and subconsciously looked at the other party's presence. After soaking in the oil, I quickly picked up the woman and turned around and ran. It seemed that I had heard the sound of a siren or a car horn, and someone must have called the police. Such a big scene, such a loud explosion, no one saw it. Baihunan could even see the lights on the surrounding high-rise buildings that were already asleep one after another. This further prompted him to subconsciously choose to escape along the dark alleys. A few hours ago, he seemed to be the hero of the whole city, but now he is about to be caught by the police. Baihunan didn't know what he should explain to the police. Otherwise, how can you explain that the person who burned to death did not kill himself? How many years have you been sentenced for match fixing? Didn't you just enter a few seniors last year? Just thinking about going to jail, those guys with supernatural powers will send someone to the prison to kill him, or let him die. Baihunan's first reaction is to squeeze the chrysanthemum. The players have been in contact with too many people in the society, and have heard too many jokes about prison. Based on this, Baihunan didn't even dare to face the police. Anyway, he would never be a professional player again. Standing on the court, it would be better to at least have a chance to live outside. This is why Baihunan obviously scored a goal, did not kill anyone, and even lost a second-hand sports car, but he could only choose to run for his life. Across 2 streets, he was hiding at the entrance of the alley with a disheveled woman in his arms, watching the police, fire trucks, and ambulances all around him from a distance. The trembling feeling on Baihunan disappeared, and he suddenly remembered all his documents. The wallet and mobile phone were all burnt out, and the body. Only then did he skillfully find the other party's mobile phone from the tall side of the woman in his arms, near the gap of the bra under the armpit, and the instinctive first choice was to call Lao Chen. As if everything didn't need to be concealed and evaded in front of Lao Chen, Baihunan himself was amazed that the things he thought were hard to say were so easy to say. I planted it and played the ball for the banker, but today I made a wrong handicap. They want to kill me. Old Chen didn't seem to be so surprised. Grass. You. But after hearing that Baihunan had escaped from the dead and died, his voice became much older. Run, run, run as far as you can. Yuan, come back in 3 or 5 years and see if the dealer will give you a way out. Baihunan hurriedly said, I didn't. The phone has been hung up over there. Listening to the busy tone on the receiver, Baihunan smiled bitterly. He remembered the phone numbers of several other teammates in his mind, but he didn't dare to press it anymore. At this time, God knows that the police or the banker will find them and ask questions. What? It turned out that at this time, Baihunan realized that he never trusted anyone in his heart, and he never cared about anyone, not even his own father. He didn't even dare to call Bai Lianjun's cell phone or his home phone. It was easy to find out the call records these days. Maybe at this moment, only Lao Chen was the one who would definitely keep the secret, but he had already hurt Lao Chen. Heart? Only he can understand how much Lao Chen has paid for this team and achievements. Originally, according to his agreement with Lao Chen, after 2 years of playing, he can follow Lao Chen as an assistant coach and have no worries. Now it must be impossible. Just when Baihunan was in a daze, there was a beep on his phone, and he clicked it to see a text message, "Let's go all night, go to Xiaofen's place, the car and keys are in the old place, Xionan, you should be sensible." Baihunan laughed immediately, the world that was dark and cold just now seemed to suddenly become colorful. There is even a little bit of excitement. From childhood to 28 years of high school, except when I can't remember anything, I spend almost all of my time in sports schools, sports teams, clubs, and football fields. Although it is just playing and playing except for training and competition, the identity of an athlete is not enough. It seems to be worn on the head at any time like a hoop spell, and it seems that I have never seen the world outside this wall. Although I don't dare to go to the bank to report the loss and go through the formalities, I still have 1 or 2 million deposits in my bank account. Isn't it just going out to avoid the limelight? Anyway, I'm tired of playing football and I should retire. It's not my own crime. Murder shouldn't be wanted by the police, it's just a gangster chase order. You can run as far as you want, go play for a few years and then come back. Maybe the deposit interest is pretty good. So the more I think about Baihunan, the more I can't stand it. I have been studying for more than 20 years and suddenly feel like I am on vacation. Although this study is not so serious, but the real vacation, the feeling of complete psychological relaxation is similar to another day. Society, my Nan brother, I'm going to run away. Baihunan actually laughed twice. It seems that his life has never been difficult, I can still live a great life. Following this ha-ha sound, the woman in her arms opened her eyes drunkenly and panted, "Ah! It hurts, where?" The voice was soft and groaning, with a lazy and charming ignorant atmosphere, which made Baihunan suddenly full of like never before, and he touched it along the way, in exchange for Yuxiyi's anger and refusal to greet him. "Ah! Don't, here it is. Don't, ah! Ah!" The inappropriate sounds of children in the dark alley continued for a long time. I don't know if it's alcohol or the pressure brought by the huge fear. In short, Baihunan also needs this kind of thing to let himself vent completely. What moral standards can you expect from a professional athlete who has been raised in a hormonally strong environment? He has always believed in instant fun. As for revenge, for this life-threatening revenge, Brother Hunan has not thought about it so much. Let's run for his life first. Someone seems to have said that the palace and brothels are the filthiest places. In Baihunan's opinion, the domestic football circle is the filthiest. Of course, he can't use such a slick word, it's black. It is black from top to bottom, inside and out. Officials, coaches, players, and clubs are not clean. This kind of dark world can be played well, it's really erhu in the crotch, nonsense. So at this moment Baihunan suddenly felt so refreshed that he wanted to call out, and finally he could leave this stinking ditch-like business, so he should make a decision for himself. Can I still be suffocated to death by urine? Baihunan, who seemed to be suddenly relaxed from the inside out, sneakily stuffed the girl who was as soft as mud into a taxi, and regardless of the girl who had tasted the sweetness, he kept reaching out and pulling his arm, sternly refusing to say that he still had something to do, and turned around. Just ran, I guess she was drunk before that, and now the dizzy girl can't remember what happened before she woke up. After trotting along the street for 2 or 3 kilometers, he returned to the roadside outside the stadium. Sure enough, Lao Chen's inconspicuous white polo was parked in a row of vehicles of various colors. Bai Hunan glanced around alertly. It was already 2 in the morning. The street I passed was very quiet. I squatted down and touched the right rear wheel, and sure enough, the car key was inserted into the gap of the shock spring. After a life-and-death car accident fight, plus a short and fast field battle at the entrance of the alley, my brain after drinking alcohol was completely sober after running and sweating. After quickly taking the key and squatting into the car, I just lit the fire, but found that there was something under the handbrake handle. It's a cowhide envelope. You don't need to open it when you pick it up. Just weighing the familiar size, thickness, and weight made Bai Hunan whistle excitedly. There is at least 20,000 yuan in travel expenses. Old Chen is really enough buddy. But I didn't do less for him. That's what Bai Hunan thought. He didn't even turn on the lights. He skidded into the road skillfully, and he turned on the headlights on the main road where only taxis were already merged. He started to put on the accelerator and head towards the neighboring province hundreds of kilometers away. Rongdu, the provincial capital, left. Old Chen's daughter, Chen Sufen, is studying in Rongdu, and everyone in the team, including Old Chen, thinks that she is Bai Hunan's little daughter-in-law. Bai Hunan, who was running wildly on the highway, was full of thoughts on whether he should go to her or not. Especially when I couldn't find any hilarious music to refresh myself, I had to turn on the radio to search for the channel, but I heard a traffic radio broadcast. Just now, there was a tragic sports car accident in the downtown street in the northern district. After a body was found at the scene, Bai Hunan became more and more shuddered, just wanted to run as far as possible. Walking all night seems to be a reliable decision. The police definitely did not block the major intersections to check people and cars, and even after rushing to the silent highway, the scene that happened just now felt a little unreal. But Bai Hunan definitely knew that the crazy collision and the screaming fireball in the sea of fire that he had deeply remembered in his mind were real. Nothing can go back to before. Now we can only run away desperately, the farther the better. Even Xiaofen is dangerous, at least we can't bring this mess to Chen Sufen. This basic common sense, Bai Hunan still knows. These dealers have lost millions, and now they have lost Ma Zhe's life. At least there must be an explanation in the rivers and lakes. It must be an endless ending. As long as they know that they are not dead, everyone related to them will look for them. Therefore, when he arrived in Rongdu in the early morning, Bai Hunan did not find Chen Sufen's university, but first found a nearby parking lot and parked his car, and then took a nap in the back row of the car until it was bright outside. Only after waking up from the noise of the heavy traffic, did I get out of the car with sleepy eyes and find a public phone to call. The bell rang more than 10 times before impatiently answering, "Which one?" Bai Hunan said succinctly, "Did Lao Chen tell you, I ran away in an accident, and Cheng Rong passed by to look at you?" The other end of the phone was silent for about 10 seconds, probably because he covered the microphone and changed the place, and then Chen Sufen's somewhat low and hoarse voice broke out over the microphone with a lower roar, "Fuck you mother! You are a death plague! I finally found out that the pot was made of iron, and only when I got into trouble did I know that I came to me." Bai Hunan listened to Cyclonus swear words in the microphone, with a very useful smirk on his face. The aunt at the newsstand could vaguely hear the scolding, and looked at this man who couldn't respond to the scolding inexplicably. Bai Hunan even added fuel to the fire, "My mother, you can do whatever you want to her. In a word, if you don't come out, I'll leave if you don't come." The side stopped for a while, and then raised the volume and cursed, "Where is your mother? Wait." Hearing that tone, most of them meant to cut with a knife. Bai Hunan also looked at the surrounding environment. It was actually his first time here, and he hung up angrily after reporting his position. The aunt was very dissatisfied with Bai Hunan's use of 100 yuan bills to pay 50 cents for the phone bill, and complained that her change was consumed early in the morning. Baihunan bought some breakfast drinks by the way to make the aunt look better. So when Chen Sufen strode out from the gate of Shutu Physical Education College, she was greeted by Baihunan's smiling face, yogurt with a straw in one hand, and boiled corn with tea eggs in the other. Have some time between classes. No meal? It tastes pretty good. I really have to take a big step to describe it, because the long legs under these denim shorts are like a full-fledged adult deer. Although I only wear a pair of purple foam flip-flops, I can't hide the slender and vigorous breath. Not to mention how hot the black camisole on her body is, her tall figure and agile movements seem to be a professional sportsman. The eyes drifting over intentionally or unintentionally, it is said that there are quite a few idle people waiting all day long to see beautiful girls at the entrance of the sports academy. But now, seeing the tall young man coming up to flatter him, he had to say in his heart that the dog day is really a pair of matching dogs and men. It's true that Baihunan's appearance is not bad. The body shape of a professional athlete is naturally a standard bodybuilding. Although the clothes are a little messy at the moment, and the face has been lowered so that no one can see it, just the back looks full of masculinity. It's really a man and a woman. The key is to be able to sell small in such a low voice. At first glance, you are a master of picking up girls. The change in the tall slender girl's expression also shows this. In fact, she didn't feel angry when she rushed out of the door. The hurried steps even betrayed her inner emotions, but after standing still, she could still speak with cold arrogance. You think I don't know about your crap? Don't follow me. With his hands on his chest, he made the chest of the camisole to show off the scale. Baihunan even dismantled it face to face. It's all right, I've washed your underwear since I was a child, so I don't need to pretend to grow up in front of me. It's you who only grows tall and doesn't have breasts. Chen Sufen instantly opened her teeth and danced her claws. What did you say? His hands were off his chest. It was a little flat, but it wasn't that there were no. Baihunan resisted with the things in his hand. Okay, I really had a big accident this time, and someone died. I have to run away quickly. Come by and have a look. You can find a good family to marry earlier. More to say, sad feeling. The girl's rudeness seemed to be bluffing, and she instantly restrained. What? What's wrong? Don't go. As she said that, she grabbed Baihunan's hand anxiously, as if he was afraid that he would run away. Alas, those melon eaters who were watching from a distance all shook their heads a little. This girl is considered meat on the chopping block. It makes people feel that the world is unfair. Nice legs.